What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Giants Collective. Happy weekend. We made it. The week is over. It is Friday night. I don't know about everybody else, but I feel damn good. TGIF. First time we've done 2 shows in a week. Happy to be here with our girl Adriana, Anthony, and of course, the entertainer talking sports. The best in the business quartet. No, I'm just kidding, but we're pretty good.
Not kidding.
Yeah, we're pretty good. But we are happy to be doing 2 shows a week. Tonight, there's definitely some things that happened like right before we went live. And the big one is Geno Smith and is reunited with Pete Carroll in the Las Vegas Raiders. They get him for a 3rd-round pick. So quarterback rumors are rampant with the New York Giants. And it's interesting because we know the Raiders definitely in the market for a quarterback. Tom Brady's part owner over there. We heard a lot of names. We've heard Shedeur Sanders being mentioned, going to the Raiders. At least that's where I thought he was going to end up before this whole thing. And there's all kinds of rumors running around. When we do this show next week, we're going to have some damn answers for once instead of just questions and speculation. Adrian, we always start with the lady first. The move to Geno Smith going to the Raiders, how does this affect the Giants draft in any way? Or do you think this is just, what it is? Are the Raiders still going to go up and try to get Shedeur Sanders ahead of the Giants? You think they just sit at 6?
I think they're going to sit at 6 and wait because I could see them signing Geno to a longer deal. He only has 1 year under his contract, but I feel like, they could keep him, even if they get Sanders, like you keep him as a veteran for another year or 2 after the 2025 season. And I don't really think that it would affect much. I actually think that it probably affects the Giants more from a free agency perspective. Now I'm kind of feeling like there's a really high chance that Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Giants with the Raiders out of the picture now. But I get the feeling now that unless, I don't know, I think they're going to stay put at 6. That's what I'm thinking now.
Anthony, you think it affects the Giants at all? Their plans or what they had in store here? Do you think they got to do anything different? Or do you think they're status quo still?
I think it could change their options in free agency. It's now another place where one of their targets could go is Seattle now. So if you're talking Aaron Rodgers, maybe he gets interested in the Seattle situation. Every team behind us in the draft has a better situation than us, right? Like I would rather throw, if I were a quarterback, to Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf than Malik Neighbors with a terrible offensive line in front of me. So you can make that argument for Rodgers, for Darnold as well, whoever the Giants are interested in, for Russell Wilson if you want to go back to Seattle. So I think it's just one of those dominoes to fall. What I think, though, for the draft, it doesn't really change anything for the Giants in that regard because I think that the Raiders are probably still interested in Shedeur because of how similar Geno Smith and Shedeur Sanders are as players. And because he's only got 1 year left on his contract, he actually might be the perfect bridge to Shedeur Sanders. But I don't think that this is a situation where they're going to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. Like all of the rumors that we've heard and all of the stuff that we've heard, I think the most likely outcome is still the Giants are going to try and trade up to number 1, and Sanders could still fall into the lap of the Raiders at number 6 overall, more likely than not. So, but I will say this, a 3rd-round pick for Geno Smith is an absolute steal, and the Giants totally should have been involved in that one if they weren't.
Do you think that the Giants, Geno Smith has been here before. Do you think that had anything to do with Mary? Do you think they just weren't interested in him, or, what do you think the deal was with that?
The whole situation with Geno Smith when he was here wasn't very pretty, so it's probably that.
That's what
back to the Giants.
Chris, do you think this changes the Giants' outlook on a quarterback as far as like free agency or the draft? The fact this move Geno Smith to the Raiders.
No, I guess the only thing that it maybe slightly changes is I don't think they'll trade up. If you were worried as a Giants fan that the Raiders may look to jump the Giants to get a quarterback that the Giants may like, I don't think that'll happen. I don't think they would have surrendered a 3rd-round pick. I mean, you never say never, but I don't think they would have surrendered a 3rd-round pick to get Geno Smith if they intended to give up premium draft capital on top of that to go up and get a quarterback in this year's draft. We also heard rumblings like a week ago. I think it was Josina Anderson reported it, that at least two teams inside the top 7 were sour on Shedeur Sanders. Maybe this was one of those teams. I think Anthony brings up a good point that it could very well mean that he could be a mentor for Shedeur Sanders, being that so many people compare them as, in terms of skill set. So that's not a bad standpoint there from Anthony. But I don't know how much I'm going to read into it in terms of the draft. It's just one less team that more than likely will draft a quarterback in this year's draft. I'm not saying it's impossible. They still certainly could, but it's less likely now that they traded a third-round pick to get Geno Smith. And the Seattle, the thing that's more interesting to me, like we were talking about before the show started, and like Anthony said, is what does this do for Seattle in terms of the free agency approach at the quarterback position? Because as Giants fans, I think we're all at the point now where we at least think it's very likely, or at least very possible, that the Giants are going to end up with Aaron Rodgers. Well, like Anthony just said, Seattle's a more attractive destination. If you're trying to win now, they have some better pieces in place. Of course, DK Metcalf has talked about wanting to get out of there, so I'm sure that plays a factor as well. But could Aaron Rodgers potentially be swayed to play for Seattle? I think that's a little bit more interesting for me. What does it do in free agency more so than the draft for the Giants?
As far as like Seattle going after, and obviously their quarterback situation is much different. They're not going to get a quarterback in the first round unless they're looking at a Jackson Dart. They pick 18th, so Jackson Dart shouldn't be there at 18. You never know. I mean, he could also go to Pittsburgh, picks around that. I don't know exactly where Pittsburgh picked. They picked 20th or something. That's another destination. I think Jackson Dart could end up somewhere in that area. So maybe Pittsburgh could jump Seattle. It's just, who knows? But Anthony, as far as like a free agent go, do you think it's more likely that Seattle would take an Aaron Rodgers is old? I mean, he's old. Let's just face it. The guy's almost my age for crying out loud. It's not that he's not capable of still playing in a better situation. He obviously is. But a guy like Sam Darnold seems to me like he's a young guy. Sam Darnold is 26, going on 27. He's not even in the prime of his career. He's just entering the prime of his career right now. That seems like that would be a more attractive fit for a team like Seattle, who is in a better, it's funny. You said every team behind us in the draft is in a better situation. I think every team in front of us is too. Is anybody not in a better situation than the Giants? Do you think it's possible that they take Sam Darnold? Is that something? Because Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be a long-term deal. He kind of, at this point in his career, would be a bridge-type quarterback. But I do think that maybe Sam Darnold is more attractive for a team like Seattle, that they would want to pursue Sam Darnold.
I think Sam Darnold makes a lot of sense for them, but I do think that Aaron Rodgers makes a level of sense as well, because picking 18th in the draft, they're not going to be able to take, I think, QB1 or QB2 and Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, however you have them. I think they're more realistically looking at probably a Jackson Dart or Will Howard or someone like that. So I think in that case, you would want to have a more short-term bridge and then just go ahead and draft your guy in the middle of the first round. And yeah, maybe you're reaching on Jackson Dart. A lot of people think he's a late first or early second, whatever, but they could take Jackson Dart in the middle of the first round with Aaron Rodgers and make that a perfect bridge. So I do think that Rodgers is a potential option for them. But under the other logic that you mentioned, yeah, it does make sense. Sam Darnold could be a long-term solution for them if they view him that way. It's just going to depend on how many teams actually view Sam Darnold that way, because if the Minnesota Vikings don't seem to view him that way, then why should other teams when they're the team that just had success with him? So I think the whole Darnold situation is funny and very weird in the first place. The fact that they're letting him test free agency, I think, is pretty crazy. But if they do get a deal done, I did hear that J.J. McCarthy might be available, and that obviously piqued my interest because I'm a big McCarthy fan.
Right. Chris, do you think it's possible? Actually, let me just ask this. Where do you think Sam Darnold ends up?
That's a great question. If you would have asked me 2 months ago, I would have said I think that Minnesota tags him and they don't let him test free agency, because he did have a really good year. I mean, what did he throw? Like 33, 34, 35 touchdowns, whatever he did. He had a really good year, albeit great supporting cast. We all know that. Great play caller, but still 33, 34, whatever he threw. He had a really good year. Great year. Led his team to the playoffs. Unexpected year for Minnesota. So I'm surprised, to be honest with you, that they but they're showing a lot. I think they're clearly showing faith in JJ McCarthy. They invested a high draft pick in him. They believed in him. So obviously that's the route that they're going. Where do I think Darnold goes? I mean, if I had to guess, I think it's a team like Seattle that's picking later in the first round, that doesn't have the ability to trade up and get a quarterback in this year's draft. Pittsburgh could be another good fit. I think Pittsburgh, it might be a better fit. I don't know how well he fits their offense, but that's kind of a team that's more in a win now approach, even though Darnold's relatively young. Probably a better, but I think in that range, teams that are picking in the 15 to 30 range that are in need of a quarterback. I don't know about you guys. I read reports that there's 2 teams interested in Daniel Jones. I'm interested to see where he ends up. I read that the Colts were interested in him. The Cleveland Browns were interested in him. So I'm really curious to see how this free agency plays out at the quarterback position.
Sorry about that. It's the 2 weeks in a row. Nobody ever calls me. Listen, off topic here, off tangent, whatever, off script. I'm not a popular guy by any stretch of imagination. Nobody texts me. Nobody calls me. Whenever I'm live on YouTube, that thing goes off. I don't understand. It's like, oh, he's on YouTube. Let's hammer him right now. Adriana, where do you think Sam Darnold ends up? I had something else I wanted to piggyback off Chris, and I totally spaced. But where do you think he ends up?
Well, I was with Chris. I originally thought that Minnesota was going to tag him because I figure they have JJ as the backup and maybe they'll let Daniel Jones walk and, kind of see what happens with him since he was the third string guy anyway. But because they're not tagging him and they're letting him kind of go into free agency, I agree with Chris. I think I could definitely see him in Pittsburgh, and then maybe they re-sign Justin Fields and he's their backup guy. I could definitely see that being an option. I don't know if I see him in Seattle. I think it could be a possibility if they don't trade DK, because he got used to playing with guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So like, if you're going to bring in Sam Darnold, you got to have some sort of weapons around him, or I think he's not even going to be remotely close to as good as he was with the Vikings. And I also think that he has to be put in a situation where he has a really good offensive coordinator and scheme. And I think that Pittsburgh is a really good place for him to go and to succeed there.
Yeah, that's actually a good call. Pittsburgh is another opportunity. It's interesting, though. I don't remember what I was going to say now. The one thing that I actually got right, because I never get things right in fantasy football ever, and I've never been the biggest Sam Darnold fan. Chris will tell you that. I've been saying he stinks for 6 years. Going into last year, I said that guy is a sleeper fantasy quarterback, and you should draft Sam Darnold, and I did. I actually picked him in the 4th round, and he kicked ass for us, brought us to the playoffs because he was great. So obviously when you have better weapons around you, the Jets are never a good situation for anybody. It doesn't matter how good the quarterback is. If anybody actually is worse than us, maybe they're not even a worse situation, but they're just the Jets. I don't know how else to explain it. They're just the Jets. It's just amazing. So obviously a lot of quarterback rumors. Aaron Rodgers seems to be the consensus for the New York Giants. Chris, gut feeling. Aaron Rodgers started for the Giants in 2025.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be a Giant. Like I'm not like 100% sold it's going to happen, but if I had to pick one way or the other right now, yeah, I'm leaning he's going to be a Giant, especially when you look at there's not many other suitors out there. Maybe the Steelers could make sense for sure. That's another team where I think that if his mission is to win a Super Bowl, the Steelers are a better fit. I don't know where his head is at though, because reportedly he kind of started this guy, at least from what I've read. He was the one that let the Giants know I'm potentially interested. So there's interest there. I think it makes a world of sense for Joe Shane, as we talked about 2 days ago. At least my reasoning is, if you're Shane, you're worried of what Mara said. Even if you draft a quarterback, you're not sure if the team wins 3 or 4 games against a brutal schedule that you're going to be able to retain your job. If you get a guy like Rodgers and he wins you 6 or 7 games and you're able to ease that rookie quarterback in, he only has to play the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. You're probably coming back for another year to get another year with that rookie second-year quarterback at that point. So I think it makes a ton of sense for Joe Shane to bring in a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying that it's going to be the best move for the New York Giants long-term. It could easily flop, but thinking about it from Shane's perspective, I think it makes a world of sense. I think Russell Wilson makes sense too, as Anthony brought up on Twitter today. I think either one of those quarterbacks, if I had to guess, I think one of them will be a Giant, and I'm leaning Rodgers.
Adriana, why do you think Aaron Rodgers would start this whole? Why do you think he would want to be a Giant? We've talked about this before. Anthony mentioned it tonight. We're not in a very good situation, and he's at the end of his career. It's hard to imagine he'd want to go to a team that just was 3-14. Is it possible he wants to play for Brian Daboll? I'm trying to think of why he would go to the Giants, as far as like, instead of other opportunities like Pittsburgh, who always is a competitor, or a team like Seattle, who now just traded Geno Smith, and they're in a better situation than us. But it does seem like Aaron Rodgers really is destined to be a Giant. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I've been thinking about that too, because I'm trying to look at it from his perspective, right? And when Joe Shane says like, we're close, I can see his rationale for that. I don't agree with it, but I could see that if they have a good free agency and they bring in Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, a cornerback, and a guard, all of a sudden you're looking in theory and you're like, okay, well, this team on paper is a lot better than it was last year. And then you have the draft to do whatever you need to do in the draft. So like in theory, it sounds great. But I think from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, like you're looking at it, and Jermaine Illuminor put this on Twitter the other day when he was going after Greeny, because Greeny's like, why does anyone want to go to the Giants? Their offensive line can't block for anything. And Illuminor made a fair point, and he was like, listen, before Andrew Thomas went down, we held our own against some really good defensive linemen. So I think if you're Aaron Rodgers, you could say, well, number one, I don't have to move because supposedly he wants to stay in the area. He loves his house, whatever. So I think he's got that. He can stick with the Pat McAfee thing. Maybe he respects Brian Daboll as a coach. I mean, the only thing that I could think is he respects Daboll and thinks that with Malik Neighbors and with a couple upgrades that he could be successful on the Giants. But what I can't seem to understand is like he went to the Jets and they basically gave him free reign, and he ran the show and he did whatever he wanted, and he got the GM fired and he got the head coach fired and he got Mike Williams traded and like brought in all his buddies, and it still didn't work out. So I'm like, why does he think it's going to work at the Giants? And if you're a Giants fan, like, I don't know why you think that it's going to work here, because like Chris said, I mean, I think if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, like it doesn't mean that we're winning 10 games this year. You're talking about one person who's 41 years old and is not the MVP caliber player that he was 4 years ago when he won the MVP. So I don't know. For me, it's hard to wrap my head around. I get it. He's a good football player. I'm never going to deny that. So I see that point of it. But I think him and Daboll are going to kill each other. I'm like, I just cannot picture them in a room getting along. Like Rob Saleh seems like a laid back, chill guy. He was cool to let Aaron Rodgers do his thing. I don't know. Maybe Daboll is going to do that. And that is my nightmare. But maybe I'm wrong about Daboll. He's this player coach guy. He's the Aaron Boone of the NFL. And, you know, maybe he's just going to let players do whatever they want. Like he lets Malik Neighbors do whatever he wants on the field and does not penalize him for having the same penalty 5 goddamn times. So,
yeah. Well, I wish he was the Aaron Boone of the NFL. That means we'd be going to the Super Bowl. At least Aaron Boone brought the Yankees.
You can't say Aaron Boone bad, dog. Even though the Yankees have been doing well, but you don't like Aaron Boone.
No, but I gotta respect him. Now he brought us to a chip. I can't crap on the guy now. I mean, you know, we lost to a really good Dodgers team. I can't get on him. I thought actually Boone did a pretty good job in the postseason of managing. So I understand why he got an extension. I can't kill the guy anymore. Now he has to win a damn World Series. Mets Yankees World Series, Chris.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in. Let's do it.
Anthony, do you think that Daboll and Aaron Rodgers? I mean, those are two big egos. I mean, that's pretty obvious. There's a two massive ego. Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if anybody has a bigger ego than Aaron Rodgers. Can they get along? I mean, Brian Daboll is supposedly this quarterback whisperer, supposed to be really good at developing young quarterbacks. He doesn't need to develop Aaron Rodgers. We know what Aaron Rodgers was. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the history of football. The man's ticketed for Canton. He has an enormous amount of talent. He's still better than any quarterback we've had in our room, as we discussed last year, in the last 6 years. Can they get along if they're together?
I think they can get along. I don't think that Brian Daboll is as problematic as most people make it seem. I think that the whole Wink Martindale and the whoever brothers, that whole thing, they seem to be more of the problem in my estimation of it and the way I interpreted the whole thing. I think Michigan's defense took a significant step backwards with Wink Martindale anyway. So I think when you look at all of that, and you also look at the fact that Daboll got the B+ or whatever on the NFLPA's report cards. So that means that all of the players voted positively for him. And that's been a consistent thing. He was a little bit higher the year prior, but you know, the year prior was still ugly as well. Guy won Coach of the Year in 2022. He's always been well-liked and well-respected. All of the players around the league that he's coached in the past all seem to gravitate towards him, speak very highly of him. So I think that he's a good coach, and I think he's just in a bad situation. Unfortunately, hasn't made the most of it, and that's why we were talking about potentially cleaning house earlier this offseason. But I think the players like him, and I think that he and Aaron Rodgers would be able to get along. But I want to answer your other question, Bad Dog, the one about, you know, why would Aaron Rodgers want to come here? Yeah. And it kind of just boiled down to me. It's exactly why Bill Belichick went to UNC. Nobody else wanted him. I think that's probably what it is for Aaron Rodgers. All the stuff that we're concerned about, all of the Pat McAfee show and everything else, I think there's a lot of teams that are in better situations than us that don't want to deal with that. But because, like I said in the last episode on Wednesday, we are the mess. We are the distraction. We are the bad storyline. what's the difference if Aaron Rodgers comes over here and does the Pat McAfee show or does a trip on drugs? It doesn't really make a difference when we've had the Saquon Barkley cloud hanging over our head for an entire year. So I just don't think it matters for us, but it matters for other teams. And I think less teams are going to be interested in Aaron Rodgers than we realize. Plus, we're so desperate for a quarterback, we're going to pay him more than any of those other teams anyway. So I think that's really what it boils down to.
I'll say this. I think Aaron Rodgers would sell a lot of tickets too. I think Giants fans would definitely go out to watch him play. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. So the Giants would certainly be interested because he would definitely bring more eyes to us without question. He's still, like I said, he's not what he was, but he's still better than anything we've had. And, you know, I was never the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan, and I really wish we were in a better situation, but I can't lie. It'd be kind of fun to watch him play for the Giants. I can't deny that. I think it would be fun. And I'll tell you this, Vegas definitely thinks that Aaron Rodgers is going to the Giants. That did not go the way it's supposed to go. I don't know why that overlaid like that. Oh, I know why. Hold on one second. It would help if I did it the correct way. It would help if I did it. What did I just do? I don't even know what I just did. I should have freaking did this before. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to bring it up. I don't know what happened there. I'm going to have to go over the top of us. So there you go. This screen
I can't even see my face. What the hell?
I can't see our face either. Aaron Rodgers is taking over the whole freaking thing. But obviously, big shout out to BetUS for sponsoring the stream. You can go to BetUS. They have a great promotion going. You get a 150% match deposit bonus on your first deposit, a 125% match deposit bonus on your second and third deposit, all the way up to $2,000 bonus cash. They have great customer service. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. Fastest payouts in the business within 24 hours, and you get 10% gambler's insurance against all your net losses as long as you stay active every 6 months. Terms and conditions apply. When you gamble, please do so responsibly. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. But as you can see by those odds right there, Vegas loves the Giants to sign Aaron Rodgers as he's minus 300. So I think the Raiders are up there, right? You can take the Raiders off of there.
Take the Raiders off.
Raiders are not
500 now.
Yeah, the Raiders are no longer in the mix for a quarterback at all. So that's a good thing. I wanted to do this before I lose it because for some reason this didn't pop up the way it should have. And I got to get rid of this.
Hey, JD.
Yeah. JD, thank you, brother. He says, have to wonder if the Raiders got the signal that the Browns are very serious about Shedeur Sanders. Also slightly affects the Titans' leverage negotiations with the G-men. Adriana, do you think that Cleveland is really serious about Shedeur Sanders? Because Chris has mentioned this before. You know, he doesn't think that Dion would let him play for Cleveland. Who the hell wants to play for? You know, we talk about who the hell wants to play for the Giants. Who the hell wants to play for the Browns? These are Giants of New York. You have, no matter how bad this team is, there's always media. Everybody's watching New York. What the hell would you want to go to Cleveland for? Is it possible that Cleveland is really interested in Shedeur Sanders?
I'm sure that they could be. The question, I agree with Chris, is like, is Dion really going to let him go there? I don't think they're going to keep Dorian Thompson. And I think that, what's his name? Deshaun Watson is like not fully healed from his injury, or he's not 100% ready to go. So I'm actually kind of surprised that they haven't brought in some sort of veteran. So maybe that means that they really are thinking about Shedeur Sanders and he's their guy, and they're just going to tell Dion to get over it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go down, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Browns are interested in Shedeur, knowing that Deshaun Watson only has one more year, I think, left on his contract. And they need, you know, I don't think their plan is to bring in Joe Flacco or someone like that again. So I expect that they're probably going to think about bringing in some sort of young quarterback. So why not Shedeur Sanders at 2?
Anthony, do you think it's possible Shedeur goes to Cleveland at number 2? Is that a thing?
It's a thing. It's possible. Sure, it's
yeah.
possible, but I think they're going in a different direction. I don't know. I am buying into all of the rumors and all of the, you know, if you want to call them smokescreens, whatever. I think there's something about the Browns not wanting Shedeur Sanders, and I think that they really want Cam Ward. And I think that's the biggest fear that Giants fans should have right now, is that the Titans call the Browns and say, what if we just move down 1 spot rather than 3 spots? Because I think it's going to be really tough, you know, especially after they cut Harold Landry today. The Titans are the obvious team for Abdul Carter. They might not be willing to move down now because of that. They might just want to take Abdul Carter first overall, because if they trade down to 3 with the Giants, there's no guarantee that the Browns in front of them won't take Abdul Carter. So I actually think that news is significant and ties into this. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where Shedeur Sanders does go. But, so many reporters, insiders, analysts, they all seem to feel as though Sanders is falling down every team's draft board. Well, I guess he's still technically in play for the Browns, but it just doesn't feel that way right now. And I think they're going to go in the veteran market, especially considering what they just did to restructure Deshaun Watson's contract. I think they're just looking to hold themselves over until they get that thing completely off the books, and then they might try and build around a rookie.
Chris, what do you think? Is Shedeur Sanders? I shouldn't say because anything's possible in the draft. We took Daniel Jones 6th overall. So, I mean, anything is possible on draft night. Do you think it's likely that Sanders ends up in Cleveland?
I mean, what I'll say is this. If this smoke is true, which I'm not buying in as much as Anthony is, I'm not completely sold on it. But if the smoke is true, it makes it more likely, in my opinion, that he could end up with Cleveland because beggars can't be choosers. If the Giants are no longer interested, if the Raiders are no longer interested, well, if you're Sanders at that point, you might be like, well, at least he gets a lot of money. He's the 2nd overall pick. So I was always under the assumption those teams were going to be interested in Shedeur Sanders. And if that was the case, there's no way in hell I thought Deion Sanders would let him play for the Cleveland Browns. I still think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a New York Giant. I'm not buying into the smoke. I still think he's going to be a New York Giant. But we'll see on draft night. I think when push comes to shove, Anthony is right about the Cleveland Browns. And I don't think the Tennessee Titans are going to want to trade past 2. And I think they're trying to drive up the trade value for that 1st overall pick by shoveling out rumors. And I think they're trying to make Cleveland nervous that the Giants could potentially jump them and get to 1. And in the end, if I had to guess, I think the Titans traded back to 2 and Cam Ward goes 1 to the Cleveland Browns. And then, as you said, Anthony, we've said all along, I thought 1st overall, I'll go 2nd overall. But I think they go with the edge rusher, and I'm still leaning Shedeur Sanders at 3 to the Giants.
Yeah, it's funny because there's been, like, again, mock drafts. I consider mock drafts weather reports, right? Everybody's got a weather report. Nobody ever gets it right. This is why we have mock draft 7.0, mock draft 8.0, because anybody can just make mock drafts. You're going to get one right eventually. But more and more mock drafts I see have Cameron Ward going to the Giants, whereas a few weeks ago it was all about Shedeur Sanders being a Giant. Now, I don't know how much these mock drafts, these insiders know. They probably don't know anything. They probably know as much as we do. But it does seem like there's a lot of Giants going to trade up to number 1 to get Cameron Ward. Cameron Ward's going to fall number 3 to the Giants because Travis Hunter's going to go to Cleveland. So I just
wait till the pro days, and this is all going to change again.
And I can't wait. Free agency is gonna change a lot of stuff too. So I just can't wait. I can't wait for next week's show. Because we're gonna have a lot to talk about without question, and we may be really happy with what they do. We may have a lot of head scratching. Who the hell knows? Who knows? Maybe it's just me. Every year, the Giants are so bad, and I'm like, done. I'm like, I don't want to talk about the Giants anymore. I'm so sick and tired of this team. They freaking suck. They're going to suck. And then we get to this point, and I'm like, man, I feel like they might turn it around this year. It's just being a fan, I guess. I don't know. I think with my heart rather than my head. But maybe it's me. I feel like Joe Shane's going to have a good offseason. I felt like Joe Shane actually had a pretty decent offseason last year. I just don't think it translated on the field.
In terms of you could say letting Barkley go obviously doesn't look great.
But I think that was destined to happen, though, when Barkley didn't re-sign in 2022. Yeah. I feel like that was the year we lost him. I don't think last year we lost him. I think 2022, they offered him money, he didn't take it, and I think at that point it was over. But I felt like he had a good draft last year, and I felt like he did pretty good things in free agency. He didn't really go out of the realm and, grab this really high-priced play. I thought he did good, but it just didn't translate on the field. And, that's all that matters at the end of the day. So hopefully whatever he does this year translates into wins, because we're all starving for wins. I would think. Dylan, thank you, my friend. North of the border, Canada in the house. Love the content. Happy for 2 videos a week. We appreciate that. Wherever to be
here, Dylan.
We appreciate that very much. Jason says, maybe I'm on an island, but sign me up for Rodgers. You have 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. Any Giants fan would sign up for that. Still draft the quarterback. I don't have any question they would still draft the quarterback. Anthony, is it possible Aaron Rodgers could put up those types of numbers with the Giants? And now, listen, I think that Rodgers comes, Devontae Adams is coming with him. Just a hunch. So you'd have Devontae Adams and Malik Neighbors. That's not bad. Could he duplicate those numbers with the Giants?
Even if we don't have Devontae Adams, I think he can get pretty similar numbers to that. And I think that really what it boils down to for me with the Giants and the Aaron Rodgers thing, again, I was initially against it. The more that I've thought about it, the more that I've grown to accept it. Don't know if I say like it, but accept it. I think if last year was the worst of Aaron Rodgers and he had 28 touchdowns, and over the last 6 years, Daniel Jones never even sniffed that number. I mean, at the worst, we're getting an upgrade still. So I think that when you look at it from that perspective, and you look at what Brian Daboll's had to deal with over the last 3 years in his offense, he's been held back by the quarterback position. And I think one thing we can say is that if Aaron Rodgers is here, he's not held back the same way. You know, in terms of his ability to trust the quarterback, to call certain plays at the line or make adjustments or read coverages. He can make the offense a little bit more complex. I feel like he simplified it a lot of the times for Daniel Jones and obviously DeVito, Boyle, and everybody else. But with Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't have to do that. He can run his actual playbook. Rodgers can understand all that, and he can actually process those things and get guys in line and make any adjustments at the line of scrimmage that he needs. So I think it really elevates the floor of the Giants offense a great deal to bring in a veteran. It doesn't need to be Rodgers. It could be Russell Wilson. I think that they're kind of similar players at this point in their careers anyway. But Rodgers, I think, does have such a command over an offense. And as long as he's willing to gel with Brian Daboll and run his offense, I think he's going to run it better than any of the other options in front of us. So I think it does make sense. I see why fans are eager to be signed up for that. And thankfully for those fans, I think that's the way that it's moving. So it does sound like it's going to be Rodgers and the Giants, but of course we'll see.
Yeah, we will. We'll see for sure. Chris, I lost my train of thought. This happens.
About Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, but I forgot what the hell I was going to say. I was going to piggyback off something Anthony said, and I totally lost my train of thought. This is just happening. It's been a long week. You got to forgive me. I'm tired, and it's been a long freaking week. Aaron Rodgers, can he duplicate those numbers with the Giants?
I think he can do better, to be honest with you. And I don't know if he will because it's a new offense. So you have that comes into play as well, right? You think back to his first year with LaFleur with Green Bay, people thought Rodgers was done. And then his second year, he wins an MVP when he got more accustomed to the offense. So that's a factor as well, getting to get a rapport with the new receivers and everything, Malik Neighbors and everything else. But last year, he was coming off a serious injury where he missed an entire year. And I think he got better over the course of the year with the New York Jets. You look at the last 3, 4, 5 games, he was playing his best football for the New York Jets. I think he'll be another year removed from that injury. I don't think it's crazy to think at all he could throw 27, 28, 29 touchdowns in a Brian Daboll offense with Malik Neighbors. And you add a guy like Devontae Adams to this offense. So I think he's going to give you at least average quarterback play in the NFL if he could stay healthy. That's the biggest if. Mm-hmm. And I think he's going to make the offensive line a lot better. You're talking about one of the best pre-snap quarterbacks in the NFL. So, yeah, and he's a veteran. He would be a great guy to learn from, for the rookie if he's willing to take on that role, which if he's going to sign with the Giants, I could only assume he's embracing that. So I think it makes sense. I'm not, excited, like some fans are, because I don't think he's going to get us anywhere near a Super Bowl. But I'm also not down in the dumps about it either. I know a lot of fans don't like him, and rightfully so, some of the stuff that he's done off the field and his personality, I get it. But I think given the situation the Giants have, as we've discussed throughout the podcast, I think it makes sense for this team under the right circumstance. And I don't think the Giants would sign Rodgers to a 3-4 year deal. So if he understands this is a 1, possibly a 2-year type thing, I'm completely fine with it.
Now I remember what I was going to say. I was going to talk about it because Anthony mentioned the checks and everything at the line of scrimmage. And Chris, we did a show with Carl Banks, and Carl Banks had mentioned that Daniel Jones, he came in, he was a 1-2 quarterback, and they tried to make him a 1-2-3 quarterback, and it kind of totally threw him off. So, Adriana, that's a big thing. Anthony mentioned it. Aaron Rodgers has the ability to check out of certain protections. Well, how many times did we watch somebody come free on a stunt or on a blitz because they didn't check at the line of scrimmage? How much better can Aaron Rodgers make Brian Daboll's offense? Can we actually be a legitimate offense with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, even though he's 41 years old?
Well, and I think that's like Anthony said, I think that's why fans are excited about it, because if you go back and you watch tape from last year, there are a lot of instances where wide receivers are open. And regardless of who the quarterback was, whether it was Jones or Locke or Boyle for that matter, they didn't see anyone open. They just didn't get to that read and they didn't get there. So I think that is one of the benefits and one of the things that when you look at what we've been watching as Giants fans over the last couple of years, you have to think like, all right, a guy like Aaron Rodgers is at least going to get the ball to Malik Neighbors a lot more often. Maybe we're actually going to see Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger get more involved because we have a quarterback who's going to be able to see them when they're wide open and be able to make a play out of it. Maybe it's not always going to be a 5-yard throw to Wan'Dale Robinson. Like maybe we can finally see something a little different from this offense. And we know we've talked about this at length at this point, that Dable has had to dumb down the offense. And I think that would be one of the benefits of Rodgers, is that we would actually get to see, in theory, an exciting offense. And, you know, if Malik Neighbors can get 1,000 yards with the absolute cluster of quarterbacks that we had last year, it's an exciting idea to think, what could he do with Rodgers? And same thing, like maybe we would get some of these other guys involved, whether or not they bring in Devontae Adams, if they bring someone in the drafts, who knows? Maybe Jalen Hyatt. Maybe we will actually see some sort of success from Jalen Hyatt.
You know who I think would be the happiest with this? You know what I think I'd be the happiest? Brian Dable. How much pressure is off of Brian Dable? Because Aaron Rodgers literally could call a game by himself.
Yeah.
So I think Brian Dable would be very relieved to have Aaron Rodgers behind center. I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris.
No, I was just, as she's talking, I was thinking about Wan'Dale too. You think about Randall Cobb, like he's kind of a similar type of wide receiver to a guy like Wan'Dale. Look at all the success he had with Aaron Rodgers. So I think Shane's looking at it like that too, right? And I think I said this last time we talked. Dable kind of the last 2 weeks of the season, he kind of hinted that with good quarterback play, everything's going to look much better. And Shane could say to Mara, well, look, we got a competent quarterback now. Look at my draft picks. They look a lot better. Suddenly Theo Johnson looks better. Wan'Dale Robinson looks better. And I think that plays a factor as well as to why the Giants would be interested in a guy like Aaron Rodgers. The young players get to grow a lot more with competent quarterback play. And you get that. And if you draft a quarterback, like I think we all assume they will relatively early in this draft, that quarterback gets to sit behind one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks of all time and learn for a year. That's incredibly valuable.
This makes me not hate the Aaron Rodgers thing. I actually feel like a little bit better about it after this.
Talked you up the legs.
It's funny because I'm the same. I felt the same way Anthony did. Like at first, I'm like, no way. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, that really might not be the worst option. It might not be. And Chris, you mentioned this maybe a couple streams ago, that it's probably a better situation, not the best situation, but definitely better than bringing in Matt Stafford, who you would have had to pay a lot of freaking money to. Yeah. You're not going to do that with Aaron Rodgers. So who knows? And listen, if Aaron Rodgers has a really good year and we don't get the quarterback, in this draft, who the hell knows? Maybe he stays around. I don't know. I mean,
it also, I'm thinking about this too, as we're talking, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, I think almost helps us in terms of a trade. Because now you can't hold the Giants over a barrel. Suddenly, we're not super desperate to trade for a quarterback at number one. And the Titans, you kind of have a little bit of leverage there if you're the Giants. You could say, well, no, we're not going to bend.
We'll take Travis Hunter.
If worst comes to worst, we don't get our quarterback, we'll punt the position for a year. So it gives you a little bit more power from a trade standpoint as well.
Yeah, they could definitely go BPA. If Cameron Ward does go to Cleveland,
gives you more options.
The Giants may just say, you know what, we're going to pass and sure, give us Travis Hunter.
Yeah,
and then you'd have a guy that could play some wide receiver, and you'd build depth in your secondary, because I still think the Giants are going to sign a cornerback on Monday.
Have to.
So I think you're going to get a lot more depth. So the Giants could be in a better situation if they do get Aaron Rodgers, which is funny because a month ago I think we all sit around and go, "What the hell would we want him for?" But maybe we talked ourselves into it. I don't know, but it doesn't seem that bad now. Discussing this with you guys and lady. Danny, thank you, brother. He says, I think he's meant to say, I think we should get Fields, draft Hunter in the first round, and draft the T tackle in the second round. I think we all like Justin Fields. I don't think there's any question about it. But if you're bringing in a rookie quarterback, I think you want a veteran quarterback to mold him. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to be a Giant. I don't feel that way. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I don't think so either. I mean, anything's possible. We'll see how free agency unravels, but I'm in the Rodgers camp at this point in terms of what I think they're going to do. That's where I think they're leaning that way. And if I had to pick a second option, I think it would be Russell Wilson. I think they're going for a more proven commodity. I mean, it's clearly apparent that that's what they're looking for. They were willing, apparently, to give Matthew Stafford a sizable contract and give up draft capital to do that. That fits more of the mold of an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson.
Yep.
Yeah, I was reading that the Steelers are leaning heavily towards re-signing Justin Fields and trying to build around him. So I think that's where he's going to end up. And then, I think that with drafting a tackle in the second round and Hunter in the first, those things are great. I just, me, I'm BPA. I wouldn't try and target any position because that's how the Giants are going to end up reaching. But I like Justin Fields still. I just don't think, like you said, Chris, they're shopping in a different market, the Giants. I think they're really trying to spend big and get a proven veteran. I do think Fields is somewhat of a veteran, though. He's been in the league for a few years now, and I think the competition with Russell Wilson last year was beneficial for him. So I still do like him and his upside if he is available for the Giants. I just don't know if he's actually going to be available to them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that way at all. Jason, thank you, brother. He says, fans who dislike Rodgers for his personality or politics make me laugh. When we were cheered LT, whose personality involved drugs, prostitutes, hypocritical. Well, number one, LT's the man, so who cares about that? And everybody did drugs in the 80s. That's probably why
it's not the 80s anymore.
That's why it was a great decade. Everybody was on uppers in the 80s. And LT, it doesn't matter. I don't care what LT did off the field. It don't matter, man. I watch a guy play. I long for those days. Yeah. But that's just, honestly, Jason, the way I look at it, it's just kind of today's society. Everybody's got an opinion. I'm never going to meet Aaron Rodgers. I'm never going to meet Lawrence Taylor. I'm not going to eat dinner with these guys. They're not my friends. They're not my comrades. They're not my coworkers. I don't really care what they do in their personal life. This doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I can understand why it matters to some fans. I don't know why it should. I just want to win football games, man. I don't care if I agree with their politics or I agree with their lifestyle choices. It doesn't matter to me.
That's it, man.
You know what I mean?
Like, listen, I'll say it out front. I don't agree with Aaron Rodgers politically. But I could separate that. I think Tom Cruise is a nutcase when he's off the camera. But when I watch the Tom Cruise movie, he's my favorite actor. I love everything he does. I can separate an athlete from his personal life. That doesn't bother me. As long as he is not going to disrupt the locker room and he is good for the growth of this football team, which I think he potentially could be, I'm okay with it. I think you have to separate that. You can't bring politics into your sports team. That shouldn't impact your opinion on whether or not it'd be a good fit for your football team.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
for me, and I think, I don't know, people may agree with me, they may not agree with me, but the problem that I have with Rodgers is that last year specifically with the Jets, and listen, maybe it was a product of the Jets, the fact that they allowed him to really run the show, and if he signed with the Giants, that's not going to be part of it. Maybe that's it. But he was the one who's on Hard Knocks preaching to the group that our focus needs to be on football, and we need to eat, sleep, and breathe football, and everything else doesn't matter. And then you've got this guy who's doing Netflix documentaries about himself. He's talking about his ayahuasca experience. He's talking about being RFK's running mate. Yeah. So it's all distraction BS. So that, for me, that was a problem, because it's you're being a hypocrite. If you want everyone else on your team to only focus about football, then you as the leader should walk the walk, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to also focus on football and not be talking about all this bullshit and be on the Pat McAfee show and being a lunatic.
That's fair.
Well, he is a lunatic.
But I think also part of it was the Jets allowed that. I think
the Jets will jet.
Yes. I think if he comes to the Giants, there is going to be a very specific conversation. I think John Mara is going to be heavily involved, and it's going to be you can do Pat McAfee and whatever, but tone down the other shit.
Yeah, I also don't think he's going to have as much power coming into this situation as he did with the New York Jets.
Agree.
Because the New York Jets were kind of in a Super Bowl, or at least they thought they were in a Super Bowl window. They thought they were the quarterback away. Rodgers was coming off 2 MVP awards. Rodgers at this point, I think, is viewed as a guy that's, on the 18th hole of his career. I don't think he has as much power coming to the Giants as he did the Jets either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. Jason, thank you again, man. He says, also, if you're Shane and Dave's, would you put your job on the line with Winston or Fields, who can't read defenses pre-snap? I don't think so. That's why Aaron Rodgers, I think, makes the most sense. And again, their jobs are going to be on the line no matter who the quarterback is. If Aaron Rodgers comes in and we're a total disaster again, they're going to lose their job. I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. I think results matter the most. But to your point, Jason, me personally, I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to get better results than Winston or Fields. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I would hope. I mean, the guy's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's not going to be a superstar, but I think it's crazy to think that Aaron Rodgers can't be at least an average starting quarterback in the NFL. Jameis Winston has shown glimpses, but he's never really demonstrated that throughout his entire career. And Justin Fields, well, he does have a ceiling that maybe hasn't been touched yet. To me, hasn't shown that he's an average quarterback yet. So the floor for Rodgers, to me, is at least an average starting quarterback in the NFL. Although it, obviously a short shelf life, it's going to be for a year or two. But yeah, I think for this year, Rodgers is certainly the safer bet.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know. Again, we're not in the best situation, but I do think he's the best quarterback that's going to be available to us. I don't think there's any question about it. You don't need to agree. Like I said, the guy's personal choices, politics, whatever the hell he does, that's fine. But I think when push comes to shove and you get the guy in the football field, I think out of all the quarterbacks that are available to the Giants, he's probably the best. So, and Joe Shane's going to want the best. He has to win. He's got to show improvement. They got to compete. They got to win some games in this division, or he's gone. So, Aaron Rodgers makes the most sense, and I still want them to get Cameron Ward. I don't know how many times I got to freaking.
I think it's perfect for them to get Cam Ward or Shador Sanders and add Aaron Rodgers, because it takes heat off the rookie, and it also takes heat off Shane, because if they could win 4, 5, 6 games, and they got 3, 4 games left in the season, then you can bring the rookie in. He gets another year to build, and Shane. I think it makes sense. So much sense for Shane at this point. I really do.
Do you guys have confidence in Joe? I know Anthony's not the biggest Joe Shane guy. I know he's not. But do you have any confidence that he can turn this thing around?
Kind of.
Yeah, go ahead, Adriana. Start.
For me, it depends on what he does in free agency. Like, I think he can redeem himself a little bit. I'm never gonna go into this season and be like, Joe Shane figured it all out. We're gonna kill it this year. But instead of me dreading the season and thinking we're gonna be the worst football team in the league again, if he gets a quarterback, a cornerback, and a right guard in free agency, like, those 3 things are really musts for me. Even if he does 2 out of the 3 and he brings in someone like the top guys in those categories, I will feel like, okay, he's got some understanding of what it's going to take to fix this team. And we're on our way. And then in the draft, depending on how things go there, to me, like, free agency, I think is going to be make or break. That if he makes some good decisions, I can feel like, okay, we're headed in the right direction. Let's see how that plays out. Ultimately, until we're 5 weeks into the season, I don't really know how I'm going to feel, because last year I liked the draft. I also liked Kayvon and Neal, and you just don't know until these guys actually get on the field and they start playing. And, unfortunately, this Giants team doesn't actually start playing good football until week 4. So it could be week 7 before, we feel like.
Do we ever play good football? This happened over here.
For 2022, we played good football. We played good football.
We did. It was a nice change of pace. Anthony, say the Giants win 8 games this year. Are you going to change your tune on Joe Shane?
We'll have to see how we get to those 8 wins.
I wanted to throw it out there. See if
listen, if he fights his way out of the mess and we become a decent football team this year, especially against this schedule, that would be impressive, and I'd have to give him a lot of credit. But I also think it shouldn't just be a conversation of Joe Shane. It needs to be a big conversation about Brian Daboll. He was the coach of the year in 2022 for a reason. He made a beautiful creation out of something that was really ugly with that roster in 2022. And I think that if the Giants manage to be a winning team this year, I think more of the credit should go to Daboll than it should to Joe Shane, in my opinion. I think that Daboll's kind of been the glue that's kept this whole thing from falling apart in the first place over the last few years. He hasn't been given much to work with over the last 3 years. And I think, he's made some mistakes. The kicker debacle with Graham Gano, all these things, sure, he made mistakes, but he also has been handcuffed by the quarterback position the entire time that he's been here, but still has found ways to win games with Tommy DeVito, to get Drew Lock to play the best game of his life and ruin our draft pick, whatever. A lot of the credit should go over the bright spots that we've seen over the last few years have either been Dave Gettleman's players or Brian Daboll's coaching. So I think you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And to your point, the players seem to really like Brian Daboll. I don't know that they feel the same way about Joe Shane. So Joe
We'll see,
Shane.
because if he drafts a quarterback and the quarterback goes crazy, and that's why, then I'll give credit to Joe Shane for hitting on the quarterback. But until then, I think that over the last 3 years, the success has come from Dable, and the problems have stemmed from Joe Shane, is what I'm trying to say.
Joe Shane's buying the wrong ingredients. Brian Dable's trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Exactly.
What's going on all the time.
That's how I feel.
Bob, our guy Bob, thank you so much. It's best four in the biz. We can have a live stream of something, big breaks in Giants country. I mean, we're going to do this show twice a week, and I'm sure that if something big happens, I'm sure Monday we'll all have content.
Yeah, I haven't gone live on my channel forever. I think Monday I probably will go live, because assuming that there will be activity in free agency, I get off work late, but I'll be live for the first time on my channel in a while. But yeah, just to add to what we were just talking about there, I'm not sold on Shane Bad Dog, but I'm also not done with Shane. So I'm in the middle. It's like,
we were a gentleman a few years ago, right?
This offseason will tell me a lot. Is there some direction, or is he going to do something stupid like Dave Gettleman did that last year, where he traded down and he didn't address the offensive line at all? As a matter of fact, he let Kevin Zeitler go.
Kevin Zeitler's a free agent, by the way, if we want to bring him back.
Yeah. Let's see the direction this year. That's where I'm at with Shane. I understand why fans feel the way they do, especially seeing Barkley win a Super Bowl, seeing McKinney play the way that he did with the Packers, seeing the way that things transpired with the Daniel Jones situation. I understand it. I also understand why he did a lot of the things that he did. Not everything works out. I was encouraged with the draft picks last year. I do think he has tried to address the most important areas on a football team outside of the quarterback spot, that being the offensive line and the defensive line. He has put premium capital there, so I believe in that philosophy, but we'll see. We'll see how he builds this year. I'm not out and I'm not in. I'll let it play out another year, and then I'll formulate more of an opinion.
I feel like I say this every year with the Giants. We have to have hit rock bottom. I don't know. This year has got to be rock bottom. 14 losses, most in franchise history. 10 losses in a row, most in franchise history. Your best player went to your most hated rival, won a damn Super Bowl. It can't be worse than 2024. It can't be. There's no way. It just can't be. And if it is, I have to buy another bottle of freaking liquor. And I'm not talking about
if it is, we will. If it's worse than last year, we will have a new GM and a new head coach the following year.
Yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Also, something else to look forward to. According to Jordan Renan, they are finally moving Evan Neal to guard.
Yeah, I actually saw Anthony. I saw Anthony posted that on, I think it was on Twitter.
They heard me and Adriana last Wednesday at the end of the show. That's why it happened.
Yeah, they watch. Of course they do. I've been saying that for years. They watch all the damn time. But Joe Judge is a big fan.
I know they do, because I sent them an email about interviewing a player and was politely rejected. So I am most certain it's because of things I have said about the front office.
Oh boy, then I'll never ask to interview a player. I never say anything derogatory about Giants or their players. Not
Never. Not us.
No way. I'm sorry that we have to be honest in that you guys stunk. What do you want us to do? 3-14 is not getting it done, but we're fans. We have the right. I mean, if anybody has the right to an opinion, it's us. We're the ones that pay for the tickets. We're the ones that pay for the parking. We're the ones that spend 3.5 hours a week watching this team get embarrassed in the field. And as content creators, we spend hours on YouTube and, research and all this other stuff. They're a big part of our lives. So if you're putting out a bad product as a consumer, you have the right to say this product sucks. Change it. So truth hurts sometimes. Fix your shit. If you're 12-5 every year and you're in the playoffs, nary a bad thing is going to be said about you. Yeah. I don't think people were talking crap about Tom Coughlin in 2007, maybe beforehand.
I was going to say beforehand they certainly were, but yes, after he won the Super Bowl, it was kumbaya.
Win another Super Bowl. I guarantee you we won't talk crap. I guarantee you. Listen, I'm not even bothering Aaron Boone anymore. And Lord knows I said a lot about Aaron Boone. We didn't even win a damn World Series. You got there for the first time in 15 years. And I wasn't satisfied with it, but I was happy that they got there. Next time.
I'll tell you what, Pedro, I'm thrilled that you guys let Carlos Mendoza go.
Yeah.
He's fantastic for the Mets.
Yeah, I listen. I like the play that Juan Soto made a right field the other day. That's a
That
good
was not good. That was not good.
That's a good $765 million right field that he got there. I was impressed with that play. It's very good. I think I made that when I was 11 years old, but I don't. I'm just teasing. Juan Soto's going to be just fine for the Mets. Lou, thank you, bro. He says, fantastic for Giants football. We appreciate it. Just wait till we get some real news and we start to do the season. The show is going to blow up. Make sure you tell your friends, everybody. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe. You know what to do. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome, considering there hasn't been a lot of news, and this was just started a couple months ago. It's been a real treat doing this with you guys and lady. And like I said, we have some exciting stuff to talk about. It's going to be awesome without question. And we'll win some football games. It'll be even better. It'll be great. JLT, thank you. He says, Geno, baby, Giants 25, Rodgers, Shore, and DeVito. Yeah, well, the Giants do have a quarterback now because they signed Tommy DeVito.
I think I'm of the mindset, Bad. If you get Rodgers and you don't draft the quarterback in the first round, just punt the position. Just wait another year to draft the quarterback.
I think they'll do that.
I think they're going to draft the quarterback in the first round, but if they don't, just punt. Just wait.
I already know all the Giants fans this year going in and like, but punt the position. Arch.
I ain't in that crowd.
No, that's been happening for 2-3 years now. Can we just wait for Arch?
Yeah.
Listen, we might draft the quarterback, suck, and still get Arch. It could happen.
Good. If he comes out, we don't even know if he's coming out. But if he comes out.
But yeah, because the Mannings always finish college, and Arch is only a junior, so I don't think
he also has not even played. He hasn't even been the starter and played a whole season yet.
Correct. He started for a little bit when Ewers got hurt, but he hasn't played. But no starts. He looked pretty damn good. Yeah, I can't. He looked pretty damn good. More athleticism than Eli or Peyton ever had in their entire life.
That's true.
Dorn Gunner, our resident Commanders fan, thank you, brother. Don't talk yourself into Rodgers. He's going to get killed. I don't care if he gets killed. He's the best option. Anybody's going to get killed behind our offensive line. He's going to get killed behind that line with pass rushes in this division. Your bridge quarterback needs legs. Rodgers can still run a little bit.
I think the line will look a lot better with him. I'm not saying the line's going to be great, but I think it'll look a lot better than it has in a long time with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I think of plays like that failed flea flicker, right? In Germany against the Panthers, where Daniel Jones inexplicably took a sack. That's not going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. So you have to account for things like that. He'll get the ball out. He'll process. He'll make sure the throw comes out. So he'll avoid a lot of those hits that we saw all of our other bummy quarterbacks taking that they really shouldn't have been taking. If you process the game properly, you can get the ball out of your hands quicker and keep yourself from getting killed behind that offensive line. So I don't think that Rodgers is going to be, beat up the same way that Daniel Jones let himself get beat up.
In my lifetime, the three best pre-snap quarterbacks is Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. I've never seen a quarterback better in terms of getting the free play, right? He is notorious for that, getting the defense to jump offside. Aaron Rodgers is a brilliant quarterback. Make no mistake about it. I think he will make this offensive line look a lot better than it has in a long time.
He'll also be able to change blocking schemes at the line. He'll be able to read blitzes. He'll be able to get, like Anthony said, get rid of the football. And our offensive line sucks. I don't think anybody's saying we're a good line, but a good quarterback can make a bad line look a lot better when they're not holding onto the ball for 3.5 seconds.
Yeah. And you know what? That actually just sparked an idea. That might make John Michael Schmitz a lot better of a player because he might have a lot less responsibility in terms of calling protections and what he has to do from the center position. Rodgers is going to handle all that. He's going to put the guys in place, and he's going to tell John Michael Schmitz where to go. I hadn't thought of that prior to this. I think that's actually a subtle impact that we could see. Maybe if they do sign Rodgers, we get the John Michael Schmitz breakout year because I feel like a lot of his problem has been how hectic it's been around him. He hasn't had the same guy on his left shoulder, his right shoulder at any time. I think the communication's been terrible among the offensive linemen. I think the communication probably is a lot better among the offensive linemen with Aaron Rodgers behind them. And therefore, I think we could see a much better season out of John Michael Schmitz. So I think that's something to keep an eye on.
That'd be great. But yeah, I do. I think Aaron Rodgers makes a big difference because if you have a quarterback that can't read a defense, don't know what the hell he's doing. And like I said, how many free guys came flying and hitting our quarterbacks because they didn't know where the blitz was coming from? Aaron Rodgers ain't going to be tricked. He tricks defenses, not the other way around.
He's still going to get roughed up. Let's not act like
it's not like he's going to have a clean jersey at the end of the day, but he's not going to get sacked 85 times like we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen with him. because again, he'll get rid of the football. And the other thing we may get, I mean, you don't want it to happen. I shouldn't say may. We definitely will get this. We haven't had it for 6 years. Roughing the passer. He's a whole.
We'll definitely get those calls with Aaron Rodgers.
We're going to get that. You touch Aaron Rodgers a second late, we're getting that. They blasted Daniel Jones. I didn't see nothing. Did you see it? I didn't see nothing. Nope. We're getting those calls. Guaranteed. We're getting those calls. So you can expect an extra 150 yards this year.
In penalty yards, yeah.
You know, those are our best offensive plays last year were penalties on the defense. JD, thank you so much. With Evan Neal moving to guard under Coach CB, I actually think a backup guard with injuries, he'll get a chance. Giants O-line may be a strength in 2025. I'm anxious to see whatever. Again, I'm glad that they're doing that. I don't think you want to give up because, Chris, you mentioned this last week. Maybe it was you or Anthony. You don't just throw away a guy that was picked 7th overall, right? We have seen this transition before where guys struggle to tackle became guards, and we're pretty good. At least see what he is because he's not worth anything as far as trade value goes. He's got nothing to lose at this point.
Exactly. If you could get something decent for him, like a 4th round pick, maybe even a 5th round pick, maybe you consider it. But I don't even think you'd get that for Evan Neal at this point, especially with the contract he has because he was a high draft pick. I would much rather see the Giants see if he could turn into a guard. So I'm encouraged by that, and I don't know if it'll be good. Probably won't. We're the Giants, but maybe with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. You talk about John Michael Smith. How about Evan Neal, Anthony, with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, right? So. There are a lot of positives that could come from this if we end up with him. We may not. We'll find out in about a week.
Where am I at? I'm sorry. I got to get through these. I didn't realize it was getting this late. Lou, thank you so much. He says, have you seen Chris Snead's son playing quarterback? I have not.
No, I have not.
No, me either.
I did see that Chris Snead is helping the Giants scout offensive linemen, though, and I think that's interesting. So I think it's pretty cool.
Use all the help we could get.
He was at the Senior Bowl, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
JD, thank you, brother. He says, Dog, if we get Ward, imagine the fan excitement and Cam videos of Rodgers and Cam. This could be the last accomplishment in Rodgers' legacy. If he leaves us with a franchise quarterback, Rodgers will get credit. JD, I mean, I've been a Cam Ward guy for a couple of years. I really like Cameron Ward. He was maybe quarterback 6 last year. I understand why he went back to college, but there's no question about it. I thought going into this year, he was the best quarterback coming out in 2025. I haven't changed my opinion on that. He had a great year for Miami. I understand the ACC is not the strongest conference. I don't really worry about that. He definitely has his faults. This class of quarterbacks is not where it was last year. But Cameron Ward, in my opinion, has a very high ceiling. And I think if there is an Aaron Rodgers to kind of mold him, a veteran, a high IQ guy to learn behind, and a coach like Brian Daboll, you allow Cameron Ward to ease into the offense and you're able to build around him, not just this year, but next year as well before he comes your full-time starter. I do think that the Giants could do something with Cameron Ward. So I'm hoping. I'm excited. I'll be very happy if they get Cam Ward.
I think it's perfect, man, to get Rodgers and go and get. A lot of fans may think if we get Rodgers, we're not drafting Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I completely disagree. I think it's just as likely, in my opinion. I think it's a perfect fit. The short-term quarterback for these guys to sit and learn behind for a year, right? Kind of like what you did with Alex Smith and Pat Mahomes. There's no pressure. You don't have to throw the guy out there right away. I think it makes a world of sense. And I think it would do a world of good for a guy like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So I'm intrigued. The more we talk about it, the more I'm intrigued with Aaron Rodgers coming to the Giants.
Yeah.
I think it brings excitement too. Like, I think we talked about this last year. Who was excited to go to camp knowing that, we were going to have the 3 quarterbacks that we had, no Tyrod Taylor, like there was no excitement there. So I think this year, if it's Rodgers and Ward, whether or not you're on board with Rodgers, at least you're going to be excited about Ward and think about the possibility that maybe we have a franchise quarterback because Aaron Rodgers is just going to be this bridge guy. And if we have a little bit of success with Rodgers, great. Then you move on to Cam Ward and hopefully he's our future.
Yeah. No question. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up another edition of Giants Collective next week. You don't want to miss that show. You do not want to miss it. We're going to have a lot more answers. We're going to have a lot more to talk about. So bring your questions. Tell everybody you know about this channel. And I'm definitely looking forward to next week because we're going to get a brighter, definitely going to know a lot more without question. So it'll be interesting. We'll know if Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback. We'll know if it's Russell Wilson. We'll know whoever the hell it is. It's not going to be Tommy DeVito. I can tell you that. Okay. So with that said, for Adriana, Anthony, and the entertainer, enjoy the rest of your night, buddy. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week. And we out. Peace.